Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where I'm super excited to take a first look with you at the brand new Ferrari SF90 XX. This is the long-awaited Versione Speciale, the limited edition track-focused variant of the SF90, launched as both the SF90 XX Stradale plus the SF90 XX Spider simultaneously. Now, of course, as an owner of an SF90 Stradale, this is one I've been waiting to see, and today we're going to run through all of the details about the new car, plus give you some of my thoughts and feedback on it as well, because last week I might have hopped over to Italy to go to Maranello for a preview of the new model, and we can now talk all about it. It's the first time the XX name has been worn by a road legal production car, the first time a car with the XX badge will leave the gates at Maranello. Of course, a name familiar from the experimental track-only hypercars, but this is a car limited in number, of course very special, and one I'm pretty excited to go through. So let's talk about Ferrari's new SF90 XX. It's late in the evening in a hotel room on my travels, but we need to talk about this. It's not every day that Ferrari launch a new Versione Speciale, a VS, a special version of one of their existing supercars, and in recent years we've had some fabulous things, the likes of the 812 Competizione and Competizione A, the 488 Pista and Pista Spider, we've had the F12 TDF, the 458 Speciale, the Speciale A, you name it, great cars, and the latest of these is the SF90 XX. Of course, it remains to be seen what it will be like to drive, but we'll touch on what I expect out of it in a moment as well. As somebody who's driven a lot of miles in an SF90, in fact, in my Stradale, around 8,000 miles in the last year and a half, that's around 13,000 kilometers, I've often wondered what Ferrari were going to do to make it even more dramatic, even more of a dynamic drive, even crazier, and now we know. And looking at it up close, I can hopefully point out a few things that you might not directly see if you're not so experienced with the SF90 in its regular form, if we can call it that. Now, when I had previously driven the Assetto Fiorano, the Fiorano package versions of the SF90, I'd always been thinking, surely there's going to be something crazier coming down the line, and it's often been rumoured to be the SF90 Le Mans, which would of course been incredibly fitting considering that Ferrari were victorious at the 100th anniversary of the 24 Hours of Le Mans race, but they've gone for the XX name. It's all about bringing that XX philosophy into the road car, to bring all of that track ultimate performance into a car that's road legalized, and I expect this thing is going to be savagely fast. 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, that's 124 miles an hour, is only 6.5 seconds. It will no doubt boast some amazing lap times, and we can only speculate as to those at the moment, but when you look at it, it's visually dramatic. You have a fixed wing marking a return since the Ferrari F50, and before that the F40, a big talking point. I know there are a lot of other aero details to talk about as well. They haven't tried to hide it all on this car. They've gone full guns blaring because that's what the car is about, and the launch colours pretty much tell that story as well. The louvres that you can see on the outside over the arches, also matching details on the interior as well, and so much more to this in terms of the technology under the skin, the different options that will be available, including a new lightweight racing bucket seat, which sounds fantastic as well, and so much more to it, because like I say, I've seen each of these three different cars myself to be able to poke around them and take a close look as well. So let's dive into a few more of the details before we're going to touch on some of my thoughts about it as well. Let's take all of this in, and there is a lot to it. It's the most extreme version of the SF90, and it is extreme in its appearance. I've seen the comments on the leaked spy shots and images that have come before, and people are almost overwhelmed by how much is happening. But when you're there looking at it in person, it becomes so much more cohesive. It is a track car that's calibrated for road use, and it feels like a track car. It's got a totally new look to it compared to the previous Stradale and Spider. You have the S-ducts, the louvres over the arches front and rear, the fixed wing at the back, the extended splitter, the skirts, the diffuser. It's very aggressive, it's very purposeful, and that is what it is supposed to be. It borrows that XX ideology, but will be the first XX model to be built at the Maranello assembly plant. There are no hidden vents. It's fundamentally the race car characteristics for all to see. But as we walk around this, you'll see instantly from the front this completely new look. You have the familiar shark nose style, but everything beneath that has been totally reworked for massive amounts of downforce. In fact, 530 kilos of downforce at top speed, but the longer front splitter, the new look to the light design, the way it carries down for additional cooling to the radiators going on in there as well. As you come up towards the bonnet, you have those S-ducts very proudly sitting there up high on the bonnet, the nostrils almost, if you will, which contribute towards that downforce. The louvres over the arches, like we've seen on, for example, the F12 TDF, linking back to the legendary 250 GTO. We have the carbon fibre wheels as an option as well, before the very sculpted lower sides with those extended side skirts sticking out even further than on the SF90 Stradale. Of course, you get towards the vents for the cooling of the engine, the 4-litre twin-turbocharged V8, now combined with the 3 electric motors, making 1,030 horsepower. But it's around the rear where we have a lot that's very different, and this is where it's got this completely new signature, emphasizing the width of the car, the full straight tail lamp sitting all the way across the back, the vertical sides again helping with that visual appearance, the prominent twin exhaust tailpipes, and a lot happening down with the diffuser. All, of course, beneath the fixed rear spoiler, a big thing, given in recent years Ferrari have avoided having an integrated or fixed wing. They've always tried to keep the aerodynamics active, tucked away inside the bodywork, coming out of the rear like on the LaFerrari. And the SF90 Stradale still has the active gurney within the back. This does as well. They've brought that through to the XX, along with new characteristics and new behavior sequences. Effectively, the aerodynamic downforce is doubled from the SF90 Stradale up to that 530 kilo figure. There are the S-ducts that we've seen on the Pista and the F8, which add 20% downforce to the front, even if they do mean that you sacrifice the additional luggage space that it previously had there. You'll spot up on the top of the rear deck, you also have those openings with the camera sitting just behind, because gone is the rear window. In its place, obviously, the digital system and also additional cooling to help with that engine that features new upgrades and new components. In fact, the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 now makes 797 horsepower. It features new pistons, has a machined combustion chamber. The removal of the second level air system actually saves 3.5 kilos. The 3 electric motors take power also up to 233 horsepower. That's up 17 horsepower from the combustion engine. You still have the 25 kilometers of electric range, up to a maximum of 135 kilometers per hour, plus the 8-speed DCT, the dual clutch transmission that first launched on the SF90 Stradale, but with completely new logic, which I'm led to believe is going to be very exciting, both in terms of how it sounds on the shift and how it drives. A lot of focus has been spent on redesigning the hot tube system that Ferrari have introduced across their models to improve the sound in the cabin, while also highlighting the higher frequencies and really emphasizing the snap that you'll get on the gear shift, heavily reworked from what I know very well from the SF90 Stradale. It also features the latest technology, the Ferrari Dynamic Enhancer 2, ABS EVO that launched with the 296 GTB and GTS. We have a new boost control logic, which we can talk about more with the interior in just a second, but significantly increasing the lateral performance. The roll rate is reduced by 10%. The front brakes have been redesigned, larger brakes at the rear with new pads as well, new compounds. There's a lot going on, and visually it almost feels to me like this is a different model in the lineup. It's not just a small tweak, it's a heavily reworked car. It will come in at a heavily increased price point on the market as well, but I think that's probably going to be deserved once we find out what this can actually achieve on the racetrack. Moving inside the SF90 XX, a lot has changed here as well, notably new seats, a new carbon fibre racing bucket, which does actually have some adjustability in the backrest, and also weighs 1.3 kilos less than the previous carbon fibre racing bucket, and happens to be very comfortable as well. That is certainly the go-to choice for this car, but that's not the only thing that's changed inside. There's a new central tunnel, new options on the display screen, new carbon fibre door cards. You could have full carbon door cards with the Assetto Fiorano, but for the SF90 XX they've introduced that triple louvre style where you have the door release and the grab along with some of your switchgear plus the speaker grills. You have nets for the door pockets. You've got this coloured interior trim as well, which presumably you could match to the exterior or add any other details you would like. The central tunnel now has this floating effect. The H-pad that we know with the automatic manual launch and reverse selectors to give you that feel of the old gated manuals has moved slightly further further forwards. There are no pretty finishing pieces here. It's opened up to save weight, finished in the carbon fibre, in fact lightweight pretty much throughout with carbon fibre and Alcantara. The look back to the harnesses, there's actually slightly more space behind the seats in the Stradale than in the regular SF90 Stradale rather than the SF90 XX, due to not having the window through to the engine bay and in its place a carbon fibre bulkhead back there. Not exactly the most storage in the world, but perhaps something versus nothing. Up front, storage space has completely gone. Of course, the introduction of the S-ducts has taken away that little limited space that you did have in the front with the twin electric motors visually, with the PlayStation controller style appearance, the RAC-E system. Obviously, lots of carbon fibre going on the show cars to really emphasise all of that. But the interior is pretty much the direction you would expect it to go, without the carpets, the lightweight floor mats, the very solid feel that you know from the limited edition Ferraris of old, even if we go back to the Scuderia and the Speciale and the models like that as well. But one thing to actually talk about is the new boost control, the boost system that has been introduced for this model. The boost system that gives you 30 different levels, the extra boost display right up towards the top of effectively extra performance, enough for a lap or two at a racing circuit. When you're in qualifying mode, you still have all of the different selectors for the Maranello to run through your suspension and your traction and different computer settings, but also the e-Maranello, which is your hybrid powertrain, your full e-drive, your hybrid, your performance mode, or full qualifying if you want maximum attack. But effectively, you've got those 30 little boosts, as you can see from the yellow bar, and I'm fascinated to see exactly what that is going to be like, especially driving it like this in qualifying with CT off. Now, you can order the car with the carbon fibre buckets that we've known from before, the buckets that launched with the Assetto Fiorano that are also available on the 296 amongst other models, and no doubt a plethora of different options and trims and things that you can choose for the interior of the SF90 XX. We have two different versions, so let's talk about the Spider, because the SF90 XX Spider has launched simultaneously to the SF90 XX Coupe. That's exactly what Ferrari did recently with the 812 Competizione and the 812 Competizione A. However, that presents another observation that I would like to make about these cars, which is to do with Ferrari's recent naming conventions. Now, Ferrari are often quite unpredictable, but in recent times, when it's come to being a numbered, limited edition, convertible supercar, they've stuck true to the word Aperta, or A. The likes of the LaFerrari Aperta, the 812 Competizione A, the 458 Speciale A, the SA Aperta, for example. But this time around, they have gone for Spider, as they did with the 488 Pista Spider, although that wasn't limited by number specifically, whereas this is, of course, to 599 cars. Now, like the SF90 Spider itself, the XX equivalent retains the retractable hardtop that folds in only 14 seconds at speeds of up to 45 kilometers per hour. That's 29 miles per hour. There's been a rework to the deck though. The buttresses have changed to give a sportier appearance, to slightly change, but of course offering effectively two different cars in one. The ability to have the fixed roof in place to feel like you're in a coupe, or to drive it with that rear window down, or even a third variation, of course, completely open to the elements, the ultimate in open air experience. And with the new soundtrack that this car is going to offer, no doubt a pretty fabulous experience at that as well. Now that we've gone through the technical side of the SF90 XX, let's talk specifications, and in particular the three cars that we've been taking a look at in this video, the three cars that were used for the presentation of the new model. Now, these are very bold and bright specifications, and I think that links to the idea behind the car. If it was a race car, you'd have a livery, you'd have very out there colours, and you can see that with the way that the secondary colour is used to emphasise the different aerodynamic parts. For example, the lead car, if you will, in Bianco Artico, which is this very light metallic silver, almost white, has the bright orange to contrast against that for the S-duct vents, for the Aero end plates on the wing, for other elements of it as well. And of course, you can choose to have those in exposed carbon fibre, in tinted carbon, in a painted colour, in the same paint colour as the main parts of the car, in different contrast colours, or whatever you could probably think about. And I look forward to seeing exactly what the configurator and the options list looks like in terms of those different ideas. The Spider was presented in Azzurro Dino, the flat blue contrasted with the bright yellow, very, very out there, and I think part of some of the initial shock, if you can say, impressions that people had when seeing the car to begin with. But personally, it was really the Rosso Corsa example with the contrast exposed carbon that really grabbed my attention. I'm not normally a red car fan, so to speak, but I thought it looked absolutely fantastic. That contrast, along with the gloss black roof, I prefer the car with the dual tone nature to the paint as I have on my SF90 Stradale, but that really gave the option to see the carbon. Of course, there are lots of carbon fiber parts used. It's a lightweight material. It helps with weight savings, but also I think looks the part as well, gives that very sporty appearance. So three very different specifications. One, the Rosso Corsa, the traditional Ferrari. One, the silver, the light color, if you will, the grayscale body with the contrast accents. And one completely wacky, if you can say, with the blue and yellow, completely out there. And what's going to be interesting with this car, like with any of these limited edition models from any manufacturer, is that people will really open up their imagination, no doubt with painted liveries at the atelier and with tailor-made Ferraris programs where customers can really let the imagination run wild, as I've seen when I've visited Maranello in the past, and in fact been through that spec process with the Daytona SP3, which was truly fascinating to experience and to be a bit of a part of as well. But with this car, I think, well, probably no two cars will end up being exactly the same, like we see even with the 812 Competizioni and the 812 Competizioni A's that are now being delivered to customers around the world. I think the production number is actually smaller than I expected. I thought it would be maybe 999 coupes and a similar number, 599 Spiders, whereas in fact it's 799 and 599. I really like up close though how many things are different. When you sit inside the car, that new central tunnel, that new feel with the door card, the new seat in fact as well, which personally I really liked. I thought that seat was absolutely onto a winner. It feels like you're in a new car as much as it looks like a new car from the outside. And really, I think the two sat side by side are going to be quite cool. Normally, I would think that, for example, if you owned a Stradale, you should definitely sell it to purchase the new XX. Whereas now I think that they could be justified. The regular car, of course, without the Assetto Fiorano as a road spec car, and then this machine as an absolute track weapon. Ferrari haven't given any official times for Fiorano. I think you can guarantee it's going to be fast, but with various different hypercars and new projects in the works, presumably they've decided to hold back on that one for the time being. Hopefully at some point I will get the opportunity to share with you what it is like to drive an SF90 XX out on the racetrack, but for the time being we'll have to leave that to the imagination. I think it could be really interesting what people could do with this though, and obviously as somebody who's driven a lot of miles in the SF90 Stradale, I look forward to seeing if it will transverse across in exactly the same way. The new car has an upgrade suspension, so if you have the upgraded adaptive suspension, you can actually opt to have the lift system with it as well, which on the Assetto Fiorano you couldn't. If you had the Multimatic damper upgrade for the regular SF90, the Assetto Fiorano part of that, you then couldn't opt to have the front nose lifter, which of course inconveniences the actual usability that you have out of the car. So I think that's a very big step as well. I'm trying to think what other things I might have asked them when I was there in Maranello, but certainly having a little nosy around, of course without all the information available that we have now for the new car. But I think it's a bit of a curveball to bring the XX to the road, but once you've understood a little bit more about the new boost function, about the mindset behind the car from the very beginning, it starts to make a lot more sense. And I can't wait to film one in person to show you all of the details, to talk through it a little bit more as well. It was a true honour to be able to be there in Maranello, to be able to take in this car, of course keeping very hush about it until it has now been presented to the world. For me though, it's off to play around with a configurator and see what I can come up with for the SF90 XX. Like I said, I had to take a pause on my trip just to talk about this car because I think it's very exciting. I cannot wait to find out more. It's certainly out there. It's certainly bold. I know it's not going to be to everyone's tastes, but as somebody who owns or has owned the likes of the Senna, the Huracan STO, the AMG GT Black Series, I'm not adverse to a big wing and something that looks absolutely crazy. In fact, very much drawn in that direction. What I fear is where the price point of the car is going to be, and we shall find out that in a little bit of time as well. That's it for now. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this first look at the SF90 XX. Let me know what you think of it down below, but that's it for this time, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!